Welcome to Different Gravy, not just another Sheffield Wednesday podcast. I'm one of the hosts, Richard Miller, and my co-host. If it hadn't been for Lukey Gledall, I'd have been married a long time ago. Where did you come from? Where did you go? Where did you come from, Lukey Gledall? Dr. Luke Gledall, anti-marriage evangelist. How are you doing today?
Oh, that sounds even more fitting, the fact that, I guess. So, I guess if I'm filling out any surveys, I could say that I'm divorced. Mm-hmm. I find that really funny that you say that you're divorced, or you say that if you had a, God forbid this ever happened, if you had a spouse that died, you could say you're a widow. And not really, you could just say that you're single and say that you're actually an autonomous human being. You are your own person and you can determine your own fate. So anyway, I thought it was interesting that you made me out to be some anti-marriage evangelist. No, sir, I had a marriage which did crumble and fail, which I'm no longer in when I'm divorced. But I'm still a human being and still out in the world and still being a human being and doing some good stuff. And so maybe that's what I can say about my general theme right now.
I've got to say, I hadn't thought about the deeper implications of that. Just thought of Cotton Eye Joe and went with it.
I don't remember any lines about marriage, so
I've kicked things off on a strange note. Okay. It could have just been that you were involved in some sort of cock blocking potentially. You're kind of some kind of male Jolene type figure that has, stolen away loves of my life. There's several takes you could have on it.
Have I done that?
Was that sorry?
Have I done that? Never mind. Anyway, sorry. Let's just abandon this.
Not all of these. I'd say a very few of these things are factual, Luke.
Do you think it's just satire and a parody?
Parody. But so aside from that odd meander, how are you doing?
Doing okay. I'm doing good. I'm very good today. Even though I guess the interesting thing is coming into this week, I actually just maybe a little bit of preamble and maybe a pre-warning for going into talking about the news. I did decide to delete the Twitter app from my phone because I thought it was just complete. It was very thick in the mire of depression following the midweek game for Wednesday. And I thought still living in this limbo land of not knowing post-EFL case, I didn't really want to kind of engage in anything. So Rich and I are going to kind of try to do our best to get into some breaking hoo-hoos. And I think that's a segue.
That feels like one, doesn't it?
It does feel like a segue. Should we act upon the segue? Breaking hoo-hoos. Rich and I hopped on our segways and zoomed off into a merry little cavort into looking at this week of Sheffield Wednesday that we have had. And what better place to talk about Sheffield Wednesday than a midweek game at home to Preston North End?
Oh,
Rich,
yeah.
Would you open the topic of conversation of Sheffield Wednesday versus Preston North End? A game that we can all admit did happen midweek.
I believe the people of Preston are calling it the Stockley game due to his overpowering influence on proceedings.
I'll have to wait and see what the DVD that comes out in the club shop is titled to really comment on that any further, I guess. Like a really weird thing that I'm finding with this, there's so many strange things with the restart. I think it was the midweek games. I don't know if it was Tuesday or maybe it was Wednesday. So Middlesbrough played Millwall, I believe, or Middlesbrough did play a game midweek, as all championship.
It was Middlesbrough Millwall, yeah. And for crowd trouble, because even in an empty stadium, Millwall fans can be racist and get arrested.
So, yeah, they played the game at 3 p.m. in the UK in the midweek, which, I mean, people are still working.
Yeah.
I believe people are still working. So how much of your fan base would you alienate by doing such a thing? Or is it the fact that they don't want to have any fans watch the game? Do they? Is it crowd control for Twitter? Is that right? Would it basically just be like a series of trolls for Middlesbrough and Millwall they'd just get online and just be, it would start talking about how disappointing their football teams are, and then it would just kind of stretch to pandemic and all lives matter, Is that what happened? Is that why it was done at that time? I don't quite understand.
No idea.
Because I think there's a really weird thing about the fact that, like, because we're doing this in lockdown, I feel like I'm wondering how much of this is clubs picking times, like they're picking times for TV shows. Like, this is not going to kind of contradict with any other viewership.
Yeah, there's that. There's also just that. I wonder how stretched some of the police forces are by this. Obviously, it's not the same policing an empty stadium, but there's presumably some presence around, or there's some aspect of
protection outside,
safety having to be there. And
sure,
one of the things that we've seen is Wednesday and United playing together at home on the same night, which in the league never ever happens. I think it's maybe happened occasionally due to sort of cup bits and pieces, but it's very rare, and the authorities try and avoid it wherever possible.
Yeah, and the thing I want to say in terms of scheduling and to the next segue I'll hop on after getting off the other segue. Maybe a little bit dizzy because it takes a little bit of focus out of you. I mean, just ask George Bush. It is possible to fall off one, even though they say it isn't. The next segment to jump on is the thing regarding Wednesday is I really, really dislike being in the position of supporting Wednesday and our team is picked for a Sunday game, or our team is basically the last team to play in that round of fixtures.
Yeah.
It's really awful feeling behind of everything else, and it feels like a massive disadvantage. So weirdly, we played on the Wednesday at 7:45, thanks to playing the Sunday, I imagine, because of TV reasons. And we were the only game on at 7:45 because the other clubs, Middlesbrough played at 3 p.m., which was just insane. Other teams playing at 5 p.m., which feels a bit more kind of legitimate. We've had a bit more, technically people just need to get to, a computer or a radio, however they want to kind of follow proceedings. There's no actual, travel to anywhere, so it doesn't really kind of impede anything on that regards. But it just felt incredibly weird. It felt like a very kind of bad.
Do you want to know? Yeah. Do you want to know why? I've looked it up. I'm on the Sun website, which is it's awful to be here, but there we are. A logistical move agreed by the clubs and the FA in an attempt to minimise travel disruption for Borough and avoid them making the long journey back to the northeast on a Wednesday night.
Right. Okay. Well, that feels a little bit better, but I mean, still, I don't know.
It's still weird, isn't it?
No. Do ever teams ever play like a midweek game and then just think we'll just stay over?
I think lots of different things have been tried. I mean, interestingly, sort of early in this pandemic, Arsenal sent a side to Man City that flew up on the day of the game to try a different way of working it. They got pretty roundly tonked, but whether that was to do with their travel arrangements, I don't know.
Or just the fact they're Arsenal, essentially.
Yeah. It seems a strange one. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, everything's kind of weirdly immaterial for me because I live on t'other side of globe.
How much further is Bristol City to Hull? And they played at the normal time. Wigan and QPR. Do you know what I mean? It's like
it's not quite Plymouth Newcastle though, is it?
No, but neither is Millwall Middlesbrough.
I feel like you're going to go into a rousing rendition of Rotterdam by the beautiful south. Anyway, so that felt like a bad...
Birmingham or Hull. Yeah. But you're probably talking the difference there is probably Millwall to Borough is like 5 hours going on 6, and Wigan QPR is probably about 5 hours as well, but maybe at the lower end of 5. Do you know what I mean? Like, for the sake of an hour, they've moved the game 4 hours. It just seems a little strange that was allowed to happen.
Yeah. Very
weird. And potentially quite an important fixture to be moved around as well.
Because I had the weird thing of thinking, I've had these moments of thinking, like Huddersfield Luton was yesterday, and I thought, I was off yesterday. I was like, I might as well just see if I can watch that. That could be maybe I could just comfort myself with watching two kind of abject teams. And again, it's not. It's just arbitrary times now, or the scheduling route. Maybe that's it. It's that kind of weird thing again. So But that's a kind of bizarre Pavlovian reaction that I'm coming out with, that like I'm seeing a game that's on at a wacky time. It must be because of TV.
And actually, in this case, it wasn't.
Yeah, it's just strange. So
it has been interesting to see, because I've definitely been conscious with bits of the lockdown and things like that, how certain voices in the football community are kind of giving the Sky party line on things. So like somebody like Gary Neville is now quite a respected voice and pundit within football. But you also have to remember where his bread is buttered. And like some of the opinions he comes out with are very sensible, and he was very forthright about how the football should only come back if like it makes sense on the safety side of things and things like that. And I think he pushed back against some of the early timelines. But one of the things I've noticed those Sky voices saying is how good it is to have all the Premier League games available to watch, how they do that in Spain anyway, and things like so. This whole idea that, as you say, the perplexing thing of one team plays on a Thursday, the other team plays on a Tuesday, and they're all playing in the same game week, and trying to keep track of what's game week 12 and what's game week 13. There's definitely a push from a very powerful voice within football in Sky to try and encourage that to happen. They would like more matches that they could show in the UK, I'm sure. It's just, so I've heard Jamie Carragher saying the same sort of things, and both of those guys are, as I say, well respected, but they are
under the employment of Sky Sports.
Sky Sports.
Yeah.
So they're very much saying what Sky would love you to think out of this period of time as well. All this is distracting from the fact that Sheffield Wednesday played Preston. It's weird how little being at home or away seems to matter during this period of time.
No, it's true. That is something that's very interesting to say.
Just from from an emotional point of view, it doesn't feel like it's as important that this was a home game and today was an away game. It just doesn't.
No, it has no bearing. But then, as I don't know. It's we've been so abject at home, haven't we?
We have. Well, terrible. I mean, absolutely terrible. It's one of our worst seasons ever at home in terms of points and goals scored.
Interesting. Yeah, like you said, I think we've probably had less goals scored on the defensive outlook of Stuart Gray, but then we had a lot more kind of points.
Yes, definitely.
We had a lot more clean sheets, and I mean, this is today's game. Our first clean sheet in seven games, I think it was. Yeah. Which is just kind of astonishing.
Well, it's so strange because it's gone from being our biggest strength. I mean, that was the thing with Carlos. We played attacking, flowing football, and we were generally wanting to be the team, holding the hammer and taking things forward. But our defence, we were record breaking or record equaling in how many clean sheets we kept. And then that seems to be the thing that has deteriorated so much quicker than every other part of our game is our defending and our keeping of clean sheets. It's really sort of staggering how. But then weirdly, didn't we get close to that record? The season that was half Luhukai and half Bruce, didn't we get within sort of spitting distance of that record again?
We did, but again, that was that was the thing really about the Lukai era, was that really should have been one of his calling cards, really. Yeah. And I guess the interesting thing was the beginning of that Lukai era. I mean, we did have that end of the season where he kind of rescued things from, the sacking of Carvajal. And
it looked like we'd been shored up, didn't we? That's what it looked like.
It did, but also we had that kind of, it was also that kind of weird kind of source of, when we looked at the Stuart Gray, Leeds game, it was one of those kind of, there was a lot of strange kind of games where we seemed to look quite attacking and quite rampant. And I mean, there was also the weird kind of timing of, there's a real rejuvenation of Zhao and Nuyu up front, who looking like,
yes, yeah,
for some reason looking like some incredible, bargain crate digging partnership that we found amidst basically them being kind of really two of the lesser strikers at the club. I wouldn't say worst, but lesser, I would definitely say.
We'd won the prize in striking Splunk. That was strange. But I think one of the things that's really marked this the poor form since Christmas is it's just letting in multiples of goals. Yes. I've not been used to, so we've kind of had 5 or 6 years of really not being used to watching a team completely crumble and let in 3 or 4, 2, 3, 4 goals at times. We've been beaten 5-0 a couple of times this season as well. So that's been the thing I think that's been really hard to take. And as we keep touching on, Monk was a defender, so you'd think his strong suit would be at the very least kind of a bit of hard-bitten organisation and solidity. But it just, whether it's individuals or who knows what, we just seem to have these moments where we fold. And potentially we could have had, obviously we won the game today, but we kind of had a 10-minute period where it really felt like if QPR had scored, we could have easily been clinging on at the end of the game. And Carlos's tactical periodization thing sort of comes to mind at times, but it feels like that those sort of riding out periods, you're never going to run the game for 90 minutes. It's a competitive level of football. Everyone says about the Championship, everyone can beat everyone, which means even if you're playing the lowest of, you're playing Barnsley, they're going to have some minutes in the game where they look a decent side and they can probably punish you if you let them. But what did you? So the Preston game was marked by a couple of key absentees, really. We obviously took Kieran Lee off at half time in the previous game, and he was nowhere to be seen. Joey Pelopessi made the start and almost immediately got himself a yellow. And then Wickham was another person that was completely missing. Yes. And Atinuyu replaced him in the starting lineup, and by and large did an okay job. I thought there were moments him and De Cruz looked like an okay partnership, but but we really looked weak at the back. There was lots and lots of chances for Preston. So even though nothing happened in the way of goals in the first half, we were pretty lucky. We had a period of about 10 minutes towards the end of the half where we looked semi-decent, but they were pretty unlucky to come away without having scored, I think.
Yes, we lived a very charmed life in that first half. We really did. It was miraculous that we didn't really concede in that first half.
And then somehow we did manage to score first in the game. A pretty nice, tidy finish from Murphy. I think we do see. I mean, we see it today to an extent, although obviously less painfully. But we are having this very small group of players now. Games are turning on those substitutions. The fact you can make kind of 2-3 substitutions and still have 1 or 2 in your hand is having an effect on lots of games, and it's putting us at a disadvantage because generally our 11 on the pitch are far and away the best 11 we've got available, and almost everybody else is a drop off from that high point, whether it's due to the personnel themselves, or whether it's due to sort of fitness levels and things like that. So Murphy, who's been generally one of the brighter sparks of this new formation, just ran out of steam and was replaced by Moses Adebayo, and lo and behold, everything just seemed to start falling apart. It wasn't his fault. Adebayo wasn't personally involved in too many moments of it, but I think losing the threat of Murphy was painful for us, the quality of Murphy. But the biggest change was they brought on Jayden Stockley, and I just thought Iorfa had a terrible, terrible time managing the big man.
I'm struggling for what else to say other than it was abject is a good word. That kind of sums it up.
What worries me is most teams will have, like we've got Atinuyu, most teams will have a battering ram option. And if Iorfa is not good enough to deal with that sort of a direct attack, I think his heading is just not as good as it should be. Intriguingly, because he was involved in the second goal with a very good header today. But he doesn't get good distance. He sort of tends to head it up in the air or to the side. And that leads him, I think, more often than not to letting the big man win the header. And I don't think the other two were good enough at reacting to make the most of that. And just you look at it. So Stockley came on the 76th minute, 78th minute. They scored from a Jayden Stockley flick on. He also rattled around. I mean, people sort of questioned whether he maybe should have got a card or, even worse, a sending off. But he physically put himself about. He bashed into Iorfa, bashed into Borna, let them know that he was there. The second one, Stockley got himself after being cleaned through by Daniel Johnson. And then the third one was another Stockley assist for Brad Potts. And again, I mean, we pushed men forward to try and get back into the game and left huge gaps in behind. But it was not a good goal to concede, that Potts one. Really not a good goal to concede. Typically, question marks over whether Wildsmith could have done better with some of the shots. I don't think any of them... Well, Potts's was decent, but I think the other two were pretty average-looking efforts that maybe a bit of better positioning and a better dive from Wildsmith. He might have had a chance with one or both of them. But yeah, a really disappointing game, really particularly having led. I think we've been in that situation a couple of times. Blackburn was almost the same sort of game in that against the run of things, we managed to get our noses in front. And I think you become used to a certain sort of... Not Blackburn, sorry. What game am I thinking of? Cardiff? And Stoke.
Yes.
Both those games we were really under the caution, managed to poke our noses in front, I think.
Yes.
And I think you get used to okay, we're not playing well. We've grabbed a goal though. Let's batten down the hatches and defend this with our lives, because it's people talk about stealing of it, or smash and grab and things like that. I think teams generally love those sort of performances because it's we were actually bad today, but we managed to, kind of wrestle a win from the jaws of defeat.
Yes.
And we just didn't see that from against Preston. It was all just so easy for them once they made that switch, and that was that. I think that's so disappointing to see. We just don't seem to have that in the team's sort of collective DNA. Doesn't seem to have that. They don't get past us. They'd have to die trying to get past us. Resolute sort of approach to things. It just doesn't seem to be in the makeup. They're soft at the core, and we're okay if you let us play our game. But if you're able to put up a resistance, we just seem to be soft in the middle and ready to crumble and hand things over to you. Okay,
that really sounds like a very terrible biscuit, Rich.
It is. It's the opposite of a hobnob. We are the result of someone making the very poor life decision to dunk a rusk onto the pressure of a cup of tea. We fold like a rusk.
The thing I wanted to say about that was, and also I kind of mentioned it to you midweek as well, but they've seemingly said, I've heard a stat which has kind of been put around, which is basically it's a lot harder for teams to come back from being a goal down in kind of lockdown pandemic football behind closed doors. So it's just really incredibly heartbreaking, the fact that, again, we're just, magnificent negative record breakers, really.
Yes.
We're good at negative playmaking. We're good at really showing people, when teams haven't beaten teams for a long time or are coming in a bad run of form. And that was also the case with Preston as well.
There was also, there's actually statistical backup for this fact that teams turn around to terrible form against Wednesday. Peter Lohman on Twitter had kind of put together a run of how many. It's hadn't won in 6, hadn't won in 5, hadn't won in 7, lost 5 in a bounce. And it's just every single one of them turns us over. It's really strange. So yeah, can we sort of put that behind us now?
We can. I guess the interesting thing was we felt we needed to talk about it. I really didn't want to talk about it, but we kind of had to talk about it.
We did.
And also it feels strange. It's good to kind of get that kind of negative little buffer. I was watching Di Zamero, the Bodega Boys. They do I don't know if you're aware of Di Zamero. They're two POC people from New York, from the Bronx.
Okay.
Who do a chat show, and they do that, and they're just very, very funny. It's just them just kind of talking shit. I really like their podcast a lot. But anyway, they've got a show on Showtime in the States, and they're interviewing Jon Stewart. And talking to Jon Stewart, it's how do you kind of process some of that position of having to go on the air and talk about a disaster, and talk about something negative. And they were saying how the fact that, they feel that they need to talk about these things and kind of offer some kind of level of positivity where there isn't one.
Yeah.
And in a very kind of lofty way, it made me think a lot about what me and you do on this podcast. And, you know, it's funny because John Stewart was saying how, you know, you're not someone who's in the position for them, saying you're not in some position who's going to change things. But, you know, essentially, those do some are offering comic relief in those situations.
Yeah.
So it said that you're being he said something great, which is that you're basically being a filtration system. You're being a refinery in that thing. So the more time you kind of have to process things, the more time you have to kind of look at things that are positive. And I want to try and think about doing that. And I think I try my hardest to do that, though sometimes it's an incredibly taxing, burdensome load. You know, it feels like really being a pack horse, you know, just kind of burdened down with all the kind of negative of Sheffield Wednesday, and try and look at some things that are positive, even though, you know, we're talking a lot about negative stuff. So, which was interesting because I kind of came into this thinking I wasn't looking forward to this game at all. I kind of resigned myself, you know, seeing that lineup at the beginning of this game made me think I was kind of resigned to all this.
Well, yeah.
So it's nice to have something positive about it. However, I guess there's a little bit more news we can talk about before we kind of switch focus. And that is we have been heavily linked. Apparently, we're close to agreeing a deal with a Man City youngster, Fisayo Deli-Bashuru.
Yeah.
Which is quite exciting.
Wow, potentially, yeah. He's central midfielder, and the reports are that we've agreed terms with Man City at least, and we're talking to him on personal terms. But I think as much as anything, it's just nice to see that we're actually doing things in the transfer market. I don't know anything. I don't know if anybody does know anything about him as a player to this point. But obviously, he's coming from one of the most successful teams in English football in the last 10 years, and presumably they've had their pick of the litter when it comes to young players. So potentially quite an exciting link to have, and maybe shows us the kind of mould of player that we're looking at.
It definitely does signify someone who, especially kind of looking back at some of our kind of major kind of transfer coups, I guess from the last kind of 20 years, of which you can probably think and pick out people like Glenn Whelan and Chris Brunt.
Yeah.
Players who are young and hungry, who do have that kind of, marker of very significant potential behind them to kind of kick on and kick forward with. So, and definitely the completely right personnel that we should be looking at. So regardless of the fact that, again, because of being in this kind of negative, abject state, looking at Sheffield Wednesday and not really kind of trolling and scouring Twitter kind of nigh obsessively as I sometimes have, I haven't been able to, and I don't think many other people have as well, been able to scour the Television Academy archives to kind of put together an idea of what type of player Deli-Bashuru is. However, having someone in an attacking midfield, young, hungry player, probably got a lot of engine behind him, I'm imagining. I mean, you would be pretty disappointed if we signed a young player and they were slower than David Jones,
Yes. I mean, it would be pretty amazing, wouldn't it, if that was the case?
It would be some kind of... And they must have other qualities that would really make you think they can actually do some stuff on the pitch. So it seems like the right type of characteristic. It's the right resume and background for a player we should be signing. So to be linked potentially close to signing, we still don't really know. I mean, I guess the problem with this is we don't know when the transfer window's open. We also don't know if we're in a transfer embargo. There's a lot of questions. But the fact that we're hearing something through the media about this is very positive, I'm going to say.
Definitely. I found an article talking about him considering his options. And the writer has really gone in on Man City for letting any of their young players go. After Sancho, Matondo and Brahim Diaz, it was like a wake-up call from these developments. But apparently City haven't learnt their lesson. So if he's getting spoken about in the same breath as Jadon Sancho, that seems quite exciting, doesn't it? I didn't know Sancho had been at Man City's academy, which is
he had, and then hilariously might be signed back by them if
yes, for
the kind of rumors. Which is a bit like, well, no, it's a different team, but I was just thinking about the fact that Salah obviously had a stint at Chelsea before he had to...
well, Pogba's probably the classic in that.
Pogba is the classic, isn't he?
Because they broke the world transfer record to sign him back.
By the player they got rid of a while ago, yeah.
Yeah. So, that's exciting. It'd be nice to have a few more sort of links of that ilk, but it's nice to feel that we're out there sort of doing things. We've got some feelers out. There's nothing new from the EFL. It's not worth talking about again, but it still hangs over us, a looming cloud of doubt and despair.
the big wobbling asterisks, as you said before.
Yes, the big gyrating wobbling asterisk across all the season. The other thing that's probably worth just noting is obviously this weekend we lost Jack Charlton, a legend at the club. Significant figure in the past of Sheffield Wednesday and a great character from the game of football. We're both same age, Luke, so not huge amount, not much real memory of his involvement at Wednesday. More the kind of echoes of that through the years. But I do really remember fondly, and I really bought into the Irish team at the USA World Cup, and he was a fantastic character to sort of enjoy as part of that. And there's a great documentary that follows that team as well. So yeah, it's a sad occurrence, and thoughts to those who are close to him and affected by it. But just feels like it would be strange not to mention it. But anything else to add on that front, Luke?
No, it's just changing of seasons, and while there are new people coming into the game and coming into this world, there are people exiting this world. So I think it's maybe been something kind of very close to I think all of our kind of lives with what's going on in the world. And not that it's related, but it seems it's just the turning of life and kind of the slow tragedy of such things. So yeah, rest in peace to Jack Charlton.
Could turn a complete corner from slow tragedy. Let's talk about today's game.
Should we talk about the lineup to start off? Luke likes lineups.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense too. So I think, we preempt things, we say things. I think it's only fair to own up to the fact that I sent you the team sheet today, Luke, with the message that I'm just trying to get my precise wording when I was oh so eloquent those hours ago. It's the team that we sent to that friendly at Worksop where we warned the fans in advance it will be an XI in inverted commas and not the first team. a strange, some strange players in that starting lineup, fair to say.
Yes.
But Tom Lee's drafted back in. No Palmer at all. So obviously his injury that he did finish the game with, didn't he, against Preston? He kind of plodded on until the end of the match. Obviously there was more to that than it just being a kind of simple knock, and that's taken him out for a slightly longer term. So Tom Lee's drops back in. He ended up playing the centre of that three with Iorfa pushing out to Palmer's position on the right. Windass made his first start since the break, up top with Dacrouche, and really nice sort of element. Alex Hunt got his first start for Wednesday in that midfield three.
So just a quick thought: if Gary Monk is going to have to get a lot of the squad kind of matched up and kind of knocked together, is he using his gaffer tape?
Oh, lovely.
Oh. See what I did there? So the lineup was just insane. Great to see Hunt start. Strange seeing Odebajo within that, and not within actually. I wondered whether we might actually, if we see Odebajo again, we might maybe go for him as part of the front three, which I don't know if I'm really happy about, but maybe they might need to. So it was strange seeing him in the wing position because I'm finding it difficult finding positives on what he's kind of looking at.
Isn't it strange how Odebajo, who I think he's played right wing back quite a bit in his career, actually. So that's first off that he struggles with it. Nominally, the rest of the time is a right back and more of an occasional winger. It's so strange that he struggles in the position much more than Jacob Murphy seems to, who is a winger. He's better at the defending parts than Adebayo.
And also, let's also kind of bring in just a bit of foreshadowing here. Let's bring in and talk about Kadeem Harris.
Yes.
Who, spoiler, was just phenomenal today. He was excellent. He was really, really, really good, and looked like that was a position that he's played plenty of times before.
That feels like, I mean, I know that we've won this game, we've lost, the previous three, but I've actually been amazed how both of them have taken to those positions. And I think it feels like good coaching in that they are using their natural sort of pace to make themselves a nuisance in that position, and not just on the attack but defensively. Like, they rattle into everything. They're so quickly on the player, they very rarely get a chance to sort of take the ball down or turn or whatever. And that's the way they're committing really early, but I guess they've got the pace to probably catch people again. But yeah, Calvin Kadeem Harris had a great game today, although weirdly sort of quiet for large parts of it. I think he dampened down a lot of their QPR's best play, and just did a tremendous job. And really fast forwarding ahead, one of my absolute highlights of the game is it was at 84 minutes when it was a perfect pass from Amos. He shouldn't have had a chance. The player that's playing against him has just come on about 10 minutes ago. So, but he had, and he made up so much ground, just ate it up and got to the ball ahead of his man and cleared it. It was just brilliant to see, particularly after 84 minutes of hammering up and down that sideline. To still have that in him was great. I think there is though, but we can see it in matches. You're having to manage players. This is an intense period of football, and it will be till the end of the season. And Monk sort of talked about basically everybody being right on the red line of being well enough, fit enough to play and being too tired, and maybe at the point of pushing themselves to injury. So there's a lot of managing that, but it's pretty incredible to see him sort of put in that effort as well as playing in the midweek game. Tremendous well done to Harris.
Just to talk a little bit more about the lineup as well. So I said it was strange Adebayo. Hope for something better, to be fully awake and expectant, but however expectant for a clanger. My iPhone actually put in the notes through native text clamber instead, which seemed kind of oddly poetic. But I'm wondering whether we can give the unfair nickname of Clangarella for Moses Adebayo.
Clangarella.
I thought the front two of Windass and ADC was just pure bananas as well. In fact, it wasn't just bananas. It was banana extract. It was really like you've melted all the bananas down and you've really, whatever those fine cooks do to get like a banana flavoring it was banana flavor yogurt. That's what I'm going to say.
Banana flavor yogurt.
And I also want to say the lineup, it was pure barrel scraping, but the scraping is giving off fumes that we're getting a bad high from.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I wonder, for all his, his critics and his lack of sort of dynamism and athleticism, Ati Nuyu is generally a pretty evergreen guy in terms of his energy levels. Mm-hmm. And I would doubt that Ati couldn't play 2 games in a row. So I wonder if it genuinely was a choice. I mean, we played on their weaknesses so well today. I know it looked like a sort of barrel scraping, but I do wonder if it was just, as long as we have some pace, we will get so many chances in behind them.
I get that, and it did worked an absolute treat. But the thing I think we've seen before, though, is we've gone with those options and it's not worked.
Yeah, there's a lack of physical presence there that could have easily stopped us building in the game. But we'll get to this at the end, because there's a big question today of, you see the possession stat rolling back and forth in terms of that tussle. But today's game really felt by the end of it as a tussle of how good were Sheffield Wednesday and how bad were QPR. Because it felt like the decision making from Warburton was baffling. Because if they went 10 feet back we would have struggled. Those two players would have struggled to get a foothold in the game. They wouldn't have won the ball. Neither of them, got the sort of wherewithal to take a ball and hold it up and things like that. So if they hadn't given us all that, sorry about the English, if they hadn't given us all space in behind, but they were defending on the halfway line, despite the fact that we could have had 15 goals today. Every time we put the ball over the halfway line, it was a chance for one-on-one with their goalkeeper. And it was only through our own bumbling and fumbling that we managed to keep it down to 3. It was completely bizarre. I would be incensed if I was a QPR fan having watched that, because I just don't understand what he was aiming for. And it was so pig-headed that he saw that it was clearly getting, they were getting torn to pieces. And his only change was to put on a slightly quicker player in the 3 at the back, so that sometimes they might catch us when we got over the top. So he didn't address the core of it, that they were essentially just leaving the door open all the time. Hey, boss, should we shut this door? No, what we're going to do is have a quick lad, and when they get through the door, we might catch them. Mental. Absolutely crazy. I just put a note on the QPR's lineup. I said QPR have a woe is me bench to avoid paying appearance fees to a couple of youngsters. And then I said they're also playing 3 at the back. Like banana bread and sourdough, 5-3-2 seems to have been a recipe that all championship managers have been trying in their time off.
Brilliant. That is fantastic, Rich. Well done.
And also, the weirdest thing, QPR were playing sounds in the stadium. That's not happened before, has it? Crowd sounds being played in the stadium.
No, it's novel. I'll put it that way.
How can that be allowed?
There's anything against it. I just don't think it's a good bit of time to. I don't know if it's a good idea. It's a bad idea, isn't it? We can say that.
It's a bad idea. It's definitely a bad idea. So, yeah, I mean, pretty much from the off. So, my other little pun of the day is I actually didn't put it in my notes till the second half, but I put Warburton, more like Borberton. His teams, I remember his Brentford team being exactly the same. They love tedious passing around at the back, aimless, pointless passing between the people at the back. And they did that all game. We kept catching them in possession. So we had kind of 3-4 minutes of them just passing it around the back. The first little break we had, which was sort of Windass knocking it down for De Cruz, and then De Cruz getting pulled down by the defender, produced the free kick that we scored from. Not direct from the free kick, mind. Setting the tone for the day. We needed 3 chances to take 1. But it was a decent free kick from Windass. Sort of reminded me of the kind of free kicks that Wallace would take. Hit the target. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't need to be perfect. Hitting the target is almost half the battle. Goalkeepers aren't very good at saving free kicks most of the time. Mm-hmm. Bounced out from him, was headed to the edge of the box, and Luongo hit an absolute peach of a volley with his left foot, and the keeper saved that onto the post, and then Dominic Iorfa slotted home the second rebound.
That was just such a predatory striker reaction at first. And then the finish itself, just every little bit of it was just so casual and quality that you'd kind of expect that's what you would kind of expect Jordan Rhodes to be doing.
Yeah.
And it came from Iorfa.
It came from
Iorfa. It was just incredible.
He's a dom of all trades. That's what he is. We saw the first kind of, around the sort of 20-minute mark, we saw the way that the rest of the game was kind of going to play out, with Windass being played over the top and kind of looking threatening, but nothing quite coming of it. We had a slightly scary moment at 26 minutes where Eze nearly caught Wildsmith. I think he did catch Wildsmith. It wasn't a foul, I don't think. Was it a foul? What did you think?
I can't recall. I honestly,
but
I
it was
just remember
Tom Lee's pass back.
Very poor, undercommitted pass back from Tom Lees, which is something we've seen quite a lot of the time. I want to say it's not something new. Let's be honest.
It wasn't a great pass back, but also I think the context made it worse because Bannon had made himself available, so there was an easy slip pass forward. There was no there wasn't a huge amount of pressure on him. So even if he wanted to play a safer long pass, he could have done that. And I think you actually saw on the replay, Wildsmith had taken a step or two back because I think he thought, well, the ball's getting cleared here. And then Tom Lee spins round and plays the back to him. So it's like context was almost as bad as the ball itself was the context it was played in. And Hunt sort of picked up, same sort of time, was sort of assessing how he'd done so far. He had some bright moments. He got caught in possession a couple of times. Bannon produced a really good tackle to bail him out on one occasion. And then he sort of did his professional foul on Eze at the 30-minute mark, which gave him his yellow card. But then we seem to sort of just go into overdrive and have chance after chance. There was a break from Windass and De Cruz, which Windass sort of pushed on, took the shot himself with his left foot, but kind of hit the defender. That was the 31-minute mark. 32 minutes mark, there was another break with Odebajo and Windass breaking into the box with De Cruz on the right. Played him by a lovely ball by Hunt. I think Hunt seemed to, a bit like Glenn Whelan in his day, the yellow card he played so much better after he got the yellow card out of the way. I don't know why. But,
well, actually, hilariously, I did write Hunt's looking sharp today, and I wrote that literally just before he did that professional foul. So
that was a disappointing one. I thought that break with the three, because all of them were in the box ahead of any QPR player, and how we managed to not score from it. So I don't really know how we managed to do that, because it was a beautiful opportunity. And that's when QPR made that change. So they took off one of the centre backs, they dropped in the right wing back, and played a sort of winger in right wing back. So I guess, as I say, essentially to try and have some pace in their back three, because they just were getting caught constantly.
I thought it was funny they made a reference to Wednesday trying to turn the screw, and Wednesday always looking to Henry James, the turn of a screw, and that's a horror story also as well. Did you notice the commentary were mentioning the fact that we're always looking to cause our own problems as well?
Yeah.
That's just pride to bear on that pass back as well.
I've got to say, I really loved Mark Crosley on the commentary.
Yes.
Big Norm, what a delight. What a lovely human being he seems to be. Yes, a real treat to have him on the co-commentary. We had Lees had a free header at the 36th minute. We also got another chance in that same minute. And I've just put in massive capitals, how many chances do we want?
Exactly. That really felt like one that we would have missed. That was a really missed opportunity.
Yeah. And your creeping thought process, we talked about being a Wednesday fan, being a sort of study in disappointment and disillusion. Your natural mindset as a Wednesday fan is, we're not going to keep getting chances like this. If we don't take more of these, they are going to get their chance. And it would have been so bad, I think, to have gone in at halftime 1-0 up, just 1-0 up after that.
Yes.
2 was the bare minimum that we deserved from it. And thankfully, we did keep plugging away. They had their best period of the game, though, around that 40-minute mark, because that was where Bannon and Hunt were on the byline together, and Bannon sort of kept the ball alive from a throw-in, then got his pocket picked by Eze, who played a really nice sort of inside-out ball with the outside of his foot, and Tom Lee's smashed into the tackle. It was a very good tackle. They got very close from the first corner, and then decided to do a special set-piece routine called giving away a free kick, where they all stood and pushed Wildsmith and sort of bullied him till the referee blew his whistle.
Was that the 40th minute mark?
That was the 40th minute mark.
So I made a note, 40-minute mark, QPR corner, a hilarious kids' party encroachment. Like the toddlers climbing over Schwarzenegger in Kindergarten Cop, Wildsmith tells the QPR players, it's not a dog, it's a ferret, about Tom Lees.
Very good.
I mean, maybe QPR thought it was a kids' party. Maybe they were going to play that delicious game where you get round in a circle and kids roll the dice and they've got to hit a 6, and then you've got to put on hat gloves and a scarf and then cut off some chocolate using a knife and fork. Did you ever play that game?
Yes, I do remember that game. Yeah.
And how brilliantly cheap was that game?
Yeah, very good, especially because it tended to be cooking chocolate. Very cheap. 30p from Tesco's. We nearly got in Windass in again, but the new pacey defender nipped that in the bud. I really sort of enjoyed / found problematic that Crossley kept calling our pressing game harassment. They're really harassing them all over their back line. Just, the harassment. They've got that harassment today.
Well, that was some problematic language, did you, Rich?
Yeah, it just made me laugh. Especially because we've talked a bit about Always Sunny in previous episodes. I was watching one where Charlie was being particularly stalkerish with the waitress, and I was thinking about harassment. I was thinking about our whole team of Charlie Days chasing the waitress around.
Excellent. I really felt. I mean, the funny thing was, I felt there was so many chances that it grew. I'm impressed with you taking notes. I actually grew tired of taking notes of how many chances there were at 1-0. It felt there were so many that I was just like, I can't. Yeah. I don't want to commit these to paper because I don't want to have a litany of missed chances. I don't want to be doing a shipping forecast of Wednesday's lack of profligacy,
Or is profligacy? I think it's the other way around, isn't it? We were showing lots of profligacy.
Yes, we were very wasteful. Yes.
Yeah. I well, I think I was just enjoying the fact that we were having we were just ruining QPR. And although it was frustrating, we weren't taking the chances. And to be honest, it got staggering in the second half. I think I did get to that point eventually, to be honest, with those chances. But for the first half, I just, particularly after how low I felt after Wednesday night's game, I was just enjoying the fact that we could do this against another team in our league and not a team of children. It was interesting how often we kind of had mirror chances. Like Windass would get down one wing, and then so that happened towards the end of the half. Windass got down the left wing, caught a pretty perfect ball across the middle of the box that nobody managed to get to, and then De Cruz got almost the exact same chance on the other side, and he picked out Windass, who I said this is a bit harsh on Kieran Lee, but he did a Kieran Lee and found the defender in an empty net.
Was that the one where there was a very good reaction from the QPR defender?
It was. It was good defense. It's always a mixture of both, isn't it? It's good, brave defending.
And that was,
at the same time,
but that would look like it was just going to just absolutely break our hearts, because that just seemed to be the commitment. The story of the first half, wondering if, our lead isn't too much. We've been wasteful with his chances. And hilariously, that led to a corner.
Another great delivery from De Cruz, has to be said. Once again, there's a consistency to his deliveries, a pace on them that makes them a real weapon for us. Once again, has to be said, on the other side, our captain, Barry Bannon, not providing the ammunition quite the same way, generally passing it to the first man or the goalkeeper. But let's not wallow on that. Let's not dwell on that. A great De Cruz corner. An Iorfa flick was maybe going in anyway, but Windass took his chance and popped it in. What a relief.
Could have been a brace for Dominic Iorfa.
Could have been.
If Trumpy Bum didn't completely bog line and snag it for himself.
Or as I imagine a sort of red top headline could be, Swimwear Mod Bod gets the nod.
There we go. We can stop the episode now. That's the title.
Best half of football in 2020?
I very much agree. Well, it just looked absolutely rampant. We just completely, to even have a team that were doing as badly as QPR were, to even have that much joy against the team is just incredible. Yeah.
I can't remember us looking so dangerous in such a long time. And we let them have the ball in safe spaces all the time, but they barely encroached on our box at all. We didn't let them get near us. We only had 33% of the possession, but we had 9 shots and could have had more by half time. A really tremendous performance.
The hilarious thing was, and I'll just kind of go ahead. So I noticed we can come back and cover this, beginning of the second half and go through our analysis. But actually, at the 55-minute mark, they brought on the screen that we had 3 shots on target and we had 2 goals from those.
Yes.
Which is funny because that looks like we're incredibly dangerous from that stat.
Yes.
But then you can think about how many other chances we've missed and put ones off target, effectively.
Yeah, and the ones that didn't get to being, like, good breaks that didn't even get to being a shot as well, on top of that. Yeah.
I really enjoyed as well when the halftime whistle blew some of the footage that we got. I really amused me to see a shot of both Alex Hunt and Dominic Iorfa in the same shot. Like, I enjoyed seeing Iorfa and Hunt together in a shot. Not all men are created equal.
Yeah, like a sort of Attenborough-esque. Incredibly, both these specimens are of the same species.
Very much so. Just very, very much, yeah.
I mean, I don't know how much. It's more of the same, really, second half. I think we had a little spell where QPR looked like they might try and sort of force their way back in a bit. Particularly, I think just before we scored the third, that's when we looked at our most shaky. We seemed to be letting them sort of pass it. We sat a bit deeper. We were all lined up on our goal line, and we kept letting them kind of hit their front man, Samuel, in the middle of that. And that's a dangerous thing to do. You're going to give teams chances if you do that. So that sort of threatened to slightly turn things around a bit. But by and large, we always had that release of a ball over the top, putting them in a world of trouble again. I did sort of say at 60-minute mark, QPR make 2 changes with 1 haircut, causing confusion to the Radio Sheffield commentator. Because they brought on two young lads that had the sort of, I don't know, the same kind of floppy on top, shaved around the sides haircut.
How heartbreaking was it? Even though we were 2-0 up, I imagine, like me, Rich, you felt a modicum of comfort. Like a moderately decent IKEA sofa. You and I had modicum of comfort. So, but it was still heartbreaking to see. I think the 48th minute mark, Da Cruz's slip in the box.
Yes. It was weird because I think he got so used to Windass shooting every time he had the chance that he'd sort of given up, thinking it was going to come to him. And then he was so shocked when it happened, he just fell flat on his face. That was a bit of a heart wrench, as you say. Windass had another amazing chance over with the ball over the top. In fact, no, it was a ball in by Murphy, wasn't it? It was a gorgeous ball in from Murphy, setting him free, and he boomed it over the bar. There was another one where he was 1-on-1 with the goalie and sort of dropped his shoulder, but the keeper got his hand to it. Foiled again by Joanna Lumley and her Gurkha army. Tom Lees then went down injured, was replaced by young Liam Shaw, getting his debut. We sort of reshuffled things when Shaw came on, so I also went back to the middle and Shaw replaced him in his position.
Also, Windass went off for Nuyu as well.
Windass went off for Nuyu. Pretty impressive shift from Windass. I know, really frustrating that he only ended up with 1 goal because he could have had 6 goals on another day.
Yes,
but so. His energy levels were tremendous. And just having someone that wants to break in behind like that, we've not really seen that since Stevie May. And I think he's much better than Stevie May.
That was a really strange... That was the last person I thought you'd bring up, really.
Well, Stevie May was the last guy I could remember being like sitting and wanting to get played in behind with it so he could sort of break away from defenders. I can't really remember anybody between him and now. Mm-hmm. That sort of style of... I know that's what Jordan Rhodes theoretically is, but we've never seen that in a Wednesday. He doesn't have the pace to get away from anybody.
When you pick up the box of Jordan Rhodes in the supermarket, that's what it says on the label.
Yes.
But again, it's never delivered, right?
Not for us.
What was I going to say? There was quite a good block at the 75th minute, wasn't there? I think that was from ourselves.
Yeah, well, QPR got their first shot at 75 minutes, which was kind of a pretty tame header into Wildsmith's hands. We did. I mean, I think by and large we did some pretty good defending on the whole. We weren't pressed too much, but we looked, apart from that little period where, as I say, we were dropping a bit. We were dropping a bit too deep. Apart from that period, we looked fairly good in this game, and QPR are a team with some talents in that midfield. Particularly, Eze is very highly touted as one of the best prospects in the whole league. We didn't see anything from him today, really, and that's got to be testament to how hard the midfield worked. And it's interesting to sort of observe that there's not naturally a defender in that three. Luongo does some work that way, and I thought Luongo got through so much work today and put in a great shift, just driving us forward. But Bannon's the guy that sat deepest in that three. I think just being on the front foot and attacking everything just put us. That's where we built our platform today. It wasn't a big front man that we kicked balls into. It was letting them have possession until we decided we didn't want them to have possession anymore, and having the energy, pace, and personnel to make that happen was how we sort of built the platform of play. It was really good to see. The midfield did a great job all round, and very heartening to see a sort of homegrown youngster in the midst of that. I sort of joked to my sister at half time, it's really nice having two Bannon, because having somebody that wants to, he's not always taking the easy option. He's willing to maybe push past a man and pick a more ambitious ball. It didn't always work for him. He did get caught in possession a couple of times, but he had a great game. Young Alex Hutton, it was really nice to see. Really, really nice to see. He didn't look out of place at all, which can happen with youngsters. They can look like kids. And I don't think he did.
Are we going to get talk on the final gloss on this excellent career-set defence that was Sheffield Wednesday against QPR?
I think we should.
Oh, Jakob Murphy.
Jakob,
where did that come from, my friend? It was just brilliant. Such a great. Who played the pass to Murphy for that goal?
I meant to go back and check because there was a bit of a question about that on the commentary, wasn't there? If I can pull it up quickly, I will do.
Anyway, but just amazing control. Just so kind of cultured, and he just kind of kept it touching, kept it going out to his left. And at the time, this is what I've said, a beautiful slow opening up like a flower. Just his body just kind of blossomed out like a time lapse of a flower in bloom. Really, just to kind of roll it out, his body, and then just this effortless curl lift into the corner. It was just, it's again, like, I think as I criticized Murphy last week, he did a miss that was so effortlessly bad, but that was just so effortlessly brilliant. I think he's such a strange player. I think he's an immensely talented football player, Jacob Murphy.
Yeah.
And someone who shows, like any winger, they are inconsistent, So we've seen Murphy, we've seen Jakob of yore and Jakob of present. And then we've also seen Jakob in the middle as well. We've had mid-period Jakob, Middle Ages Jakob as well. We've had monolithic Jakob, and we've had like neo-futurist Jakob as well. Some kind of Elon Musk utopia on acid kind of Jakob Murphy. But so we know he's a winger. We know he still is a player with just so much kind of ounces of talent, who can just produce some real moments of just fantastic football. And it was just such an incredible finish to make it 3-0.
When I see that sort of play from Russian inside forward Jakob Murphy, I can only say Nazdrovia to No, it was great. I mean, it was another ball over the top. So it was Bannon. It was Bannon, and he played it with his right foot amazingly. I thought he'd messed it up. I thought he'd sort of over-controlled it. He'd taken too much run off it. And then, as you say, just uncorked this gorgeous lob into the corner, leaving Patsy from Ab Fab grabbing at thin air. It was a perfect Murphy.
Wheels on fire, rolling down the road, right?
Yeah, exactly. He perfected the Harris.
He did perfect the Harris, yes. He's been in the lab working on the Harris finish, and he's found some tweaks to. It's real flaming lips race for the prize stuff, isn't it? Really.
You're right. He's an interesting player. I wonder how much he sort of gets in his own way a little bit. Like, I think he does some brilliant things, but it seems like the more time he has, the more likely he is to do something silly or less high quality. I think, like, when he's put in pressure situations, he seems to nail it time and time again. Like when he takes things early and kind of grabs the initiative.
But I think there's still times where he's in a situation where he's got to score. And do you think there's a bit of a feel of Stephen Fletcher about that? Fletcher never really scored many easy chances.
Quite possibly.
Fletcher, did these kind of very artful artisanal headers that you'd never really expect. He wasn't very good at making a kind of Asda cheap cheese, but he can make this real stuff that you'd put out on a cheese board at a real fancy spread, right? Yes. So it's a similar deal, really, because I mean, there's some times where I feel like he's not had the composure, and especially that miss we talked about last week.
Yeah.
But this was just so incredibly casual and collected.
I think annoyingly it's sort of been in a period of time where we've been, as a team, probably at our worst. He was shining his brightest. But if there's any possibility of us getting him for another year, I would absolutely love to have him.
I'd absolutely adore such a thing. I'd be really staggered if there was ever an option or a possibility of us getting him on a permanent basis.
No, yeah, I doubt that as well. But if he's entered this limbo land of so many young English players where he's not quite good enough for the first team of the Premier League team he signed for, but
yes, he's I guess that's a really funny thing that he's becoming a bit like a yo-yo player. Yeah, interesting enough, he went to West Brom and it didn't really work out a great deal from there.
No.
So I guess interesting. I mean, but that obviously put us in the driving seat to get a player of his quality at the club, and it was a really great signing. And even for all of the disappointment with Murphy, he's been one of the best signings of this year.
Absolutely.
Definitely the best loan signing, bar none. I don't think we have not done as well with anyone else.
No.
So yeah, I mean, if there's any opportunity we can get him back again next year, just definitely just do whatever you can. But I'm not sure if we're going to be in a position to,
I suppose,
to do that again. We'll see. I mean, if they can, I'm sure they would also love him as well. I'm sure that I'm sure that Monk knows just how good a player he is and can see that. I'm sure everybody at the club can as well. The thing I want to say about Murphy, though, I mean, this is the first time we've seen him in that kind of. Is this the first time we've seen him in the shadow striker role or up top? Because it feels
it's
like
definitely the first time I remember it happening. I mean, vaguely, he did so well there. That I was like, have we seen this before? Because do you know what I mean? Because it was such a sort of preternatural way that he took to it. It was I just loved seeing him on the break, and he was always looking to make that run as well. It was really nice to see. You can't quite look.
I was just trying to think about it. You said preternatural.
Yes.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. I also tried to search up Pret-a-Porter as well, just because we are different gravy. The Ina Kamose supported Sheffield Wednesday podcast. It's a real touch 'em up and go stuff. Chang chang. It was incredible.
For a long time, Pret-a-Porter must have had something to do with Gail Porter, but it doesn't.
No, it's no having your Norgs projected on the side of House of Parliament.
Oh, those were the days.
What a great nation me and you were born in, Rich. Is that the British dream? You have the American dream. Is that the British dream? You can be a diminutive, blonde, attractive kids TV presenter, and you can get them out in FHM and then be projected on the side of House of Parliament. and then maybe suffer depression and and then lose your hair as well.
Awful times, but come out of it the other side a rosy, interesting personality. Not much else happened. There was a good bit of goalkeeping from Wildsmith for nipping something in the bud.
That was good. And you've also kind of stolen a bit of my thunder.
Oh, sorry.
Just about the
please do. Yeah, it's worth mentioning twice.
I think we have to. It's so nice. We're going to mention it twice. He did such a fantastic shift, and then to just completely outpace a QPR player who you said had come on 10 minutes prior at the 83-minute mark, win the ball, and then just cheekily ping it off him for a throw-in was just absolute magic. It was just amazing. I think we love those we're very detail-oriented to the point that we do podcasts that are way too long. But we really enjoy those kind of small moments that we really dine out on. Yes. And that was Calvin Chef's Kiss Harris right there. Or even Kadeem Magnifique. That was absolutely beautiful.
Beautiful stuff. Absolutely beautiful.
The Kadeem Harris rat's been in the kitchen, and much like Ratatouille, he's made a blinder of a dish just there.
And the QPR winger was all, "There's a rat in my kitchen, what am I going to do?"
Did you I know you said how much you enjoyed having Mark Crossley did a commentary.
Yes.
Did you love the fact that he called it a Mintonius performance?
I did absolutely love that.
And I don't even know what Minto. I mean, it's probably good.
Mintonius.
I can't find it. Google.
I think it's his own creation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Mintonius. Because he does like positive thinking videos, doesn't he, on Twitter? Mm. And I think Mintonius is a phrase of his own devising that he's come up with on those videos.
I mean, much like one of his videos was very much a walk in the park for us today.
It was. I mean, the very last sort of moment of note was we were a stray blade of grass away from maybe a marvelous sort of capping off of everything by Burner, sort of breaking through, and I don't know what he would have done if he hadn't have fallen over like he'd been shot, but maybe he would have played the ball through for somebody. Maybe he would have just curled one in. I don't know. We were having that sort of a game, but that was sort of the 90th minute was. There
was also the late thing of Harris taking it just out of play and then cutting it back for Nuyu to wham in.
Yeah, to smash into the roof of the net.
Yeah.
Yeah. A good day all round. And
beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, I think my first comment after my notes was, "What a weird team this is." To have the lows of absolutely the bottom of your boots lows of midweek to such a tremendous performance. I mean, we could have been 3 goals up in the first half hour today. How strange. It's a bit of Munkenstein's monster. If he's using his gaffer tape, he's using it to the amazing effects that The Rock manages to in the film Skyscraper, if you've seen that tremendous piece of cinema.
I've only seen San Andreas, I'll be honest.
Oh.
And Rampage.
The Rock does some things with gaffer tape in Skyscraper that make you think that they must have been a sponsor. At one point, he hangs off he travails the side of a building just with gaffer tape the wrong way around on his hands, like he sticks to the side of a building that he's moving around with just the stickiness of gaffer tape. It's incredible. So it's a must-see film, I think. Definitely worth an hour and a half of your time or however long it is. And I think naturally, as I said sort of earlier, there's a bit of the question is how good were Wednesday? How bad were QPR? In a way, I don't care because we won 3-0, and that's.
I know.
And I don't think there was bad performances. We were, everybody's worried now about Odebajo. His hit rate is incredible, but he did all right all game. He didn't do anything wrong.
The really funny thing is, I'm glad you brought up Odebajo because I've done player ratings and I completely missed him.
Oh.
So maybe I'll just type that in quickly ahead of player ratings.
Well, we should get to player ratings, but I think the other two things worth noting before we sort of get to that point. One, we ended the game with just 26% of possession. We've talked about how Wednesday for years and years now have been a team who are better when they have less of the ball, and today was a key showing of that. In terms of successful passes, we had a quarter of the successful passes of QPR, but all of ours were dangerous and QPR's did nothing. It's just such a strange position to be in that basically we allowed them the bulk of the game, the bulk of the ball, but every time we had it, we looked fantastic. We looked terribly dangerous to them. So just another interesting thing. And then the other thing that's worth noting, although as we talked about the big wobbling asterisk, we are now mathematically safe. This is where the asterisk really comes into play, but we are 10 points clear of the team that's third bottom. There's only 3 games left to play for all 3 of those teams at the bottom, so none of them can catch us without the interference of Rick Parry or Rick Parfitt, either one of them, the guy from Status Quo or the guy from the EFL. Those are the only 2 people that can have a hand in relegating us this season.
I did also consider, I don't think this is something I'm going to do now, but I did wonder about whether we'd do a hip-hop parody of Fuck the Parry, as opposed to Fuck the Police.
Oh.
Just, just to really just sidle with some hip-hop done about horrendous systemic white racism, and we're getting in on the action to say, yeah, fella, fucking awful. And I'm sure that's what John Boyega is about as well. I'm sure John Boyega is a Birmingham City fan, and he's just exasperated with them as well.
I think across the board, we can all agree that his sandals were whack.
Yes,
right?
There were some pretty funky Birkenstocks. And I also wonder as well, just to kind of go with the sheer hip-hop theme again, we could also bring in, though this wasn't the case today, Snoop Dogg would say, did somebody say just eat? Luke Dogg would say, did somebody say we're sheet? Only on this occasion, we're keeping a clean sheet.
Yeah.
And maybe the QPR fans are saying,
another thing absolutely
we're
worth
sheet.
Oh, those adverts are so jarring. As attack goes in the chateau. Oh,
You've never had.
Hang it up, man.
The really funny thing is that this is obviously what kind of happens in the world. Is celebrities do adverts in different countries because less people see that, or they don't care as much about that audience than they do about their main prime audience. So we actually have a thing called Skip the Dishes, which is another delivery app here in Canada, and we have a series of John Hamm commercials.
Oh wow! Okay.
That John Hamm does them, and they're quite good. They're pretty good, I must say. John Hamm is playing this bizarre character where he pretends to be Canadian, and at the end of one of them, he says, "Aren't you from?" His assistant says, "Aren't you from St. Louis?"
Yeah, those adverts are very strange. The other one that we've got in
further issue to make with the Just Eat adverts. So just a quick point here.
Oh, sorry.
Don't order at halftime. You order about 20 minutes in. Order at the drinks break. Order at the drinks break now. The drinks break should be sponsored by Just Eat, so you get it at the first half or the second half. So you get your delivery at about halftime, the halftime interval, and then you can have a lovely little nom nom. Like watching the Owls.
It's a good point, Luke. Absolutely. Sound advice, I think we can all agree and take on board. The weird one that's going around at the moment in the UK is we have Robert De Niro on an advert for Kia cars.
Really?
Which does make you sad, but then apparently in some sort of court case, Robert De Niro's manager was moaning that he will struggle to make 6.5 million this year. Cry me a river, Bobby. Cry me a river.
Is the court case about some kind of child payments or something?
He's pleading poverty in the court case. That he, due to the coronavirus, he will struggle to make 6.5 million this year.
So he can't meet his regular payments to.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Bad times for Bobby De Niro, eh?
Yes.
I mean, that's the true victim of the pandemic is Robert De Niro.
What about Bobby?
he can't film another film where he's past it and he's sold out. Where he, I don't know, something about him being old, maybe, and still trying to pull young women. Is that what most of his films?
Oh, sorry, it's 7.5 million this year. He'll be lucky to make 7.5 million this year. Yeah, that's what most of his films seem to be now. Or things where they have to digitally make him younger so that he can play the roles he was playing before.
Yes.
Right. Player ratings.
ratings.
Let's get on to these things.
Yeah. Joe, top 40 Joe Wildsmith.
40 Joe Wildsmith.
I've gone with a 7.5.
I think he had a good game today.
You what, sorry?
I agree. I thought he had a good game today.
Okay. Sorry, it's just such a strange thing to hear us say about Joe Wildsmith.
I know.
I'd say, come again. Repeat again, Mr. Miller. Yeah, steady. I mean, he did not have much to do, but he did well with what he had to do. I thought it was good work near the end to cover for Burner, cover for Burner had a slight drop of the knacker, as we put, for the Ote chance.
Yes,
to come out and whack it clear, which I mean he did quite a few times. He seems to be quite good at that. Those clearances when under pressure. So I'm going to say my hypothesis regarding Joe Wildsmith is that he's an Edison style keeper of putting it into Rosette, perhaps.
Do you know one of the
Rosette Edison? I think is what
Edison. He did have a good game today. I'm really pleased. He didn't have a lot to do. It did make me, one of the sort of bits of gallows humour that made me laugh midweek was somebody saying Wildsmith is so thankful to Gary Monk for giving him the starting position that he keeps passing the ball to him.
That's hilarious. That's very funny. That was very, very good.
But all that is forgotten. Today is a better day, and 7.5 for Joe Wildsmith feels absolutely, heartily a welcome turn of events. And then the forgotten man we should do the centre backs first, I suppose. But so let's go for Dominic Iorfa on the right side of the three this time.
Dominic Iorfa gets an 8. I've actually I think if he didn't score, I'd probably give him a 7.5. He gets a 0.5 mark added for the obligatory incredible finish, and that was just monumental. It's a huge moment for us. And we really banked and are thankful the fact that he shone so hard at that moment.
Yeah.
Outside of that, just a very he did have an assist. I completely forgot about because I kept seeing that goal and I kept missing who did the flick on.
I'm pretty sure it was him.
I would love to know, but I imagine you're probably right.
Oh, I've looked at Flash Scores. Flash Scores is completely wrong because I've just given it to De Cruz. Definitely got a touch. I think it was Iorfa. I think it was him. He sort of ran away celebrating and then caught up with Windass, who was also celebrating. I think, Anyway, yeah. Well, tremendously well done. What a great game from him. So in the middle of the pack this time, we had Tom Lees making his return.
Tom Lees. 7.5 for Tom Lees.
I think that's fair. He had one bad moment, he had one really good moment, so it kind of...
I'm also wondering he might be disappointed himself for the missed header early on as well.
Yeah, that was a bit of a stinker.
Which weirdly, actually, I think we've seen, even though sometimes we're maybe a little bit questioning about the defensive prowess from headers from Tom Lees. I will say that at this season, attacking header-wise, he's been pretty good. He's got notched a couple of goals this season as Tom Lees.
He competes brilliantly well in the opposition box for the ball. I think he doesn't get as many goals as he should. I think he gets on the end of things quite often, as we saw today. I mean, that's the sort of header that 2 or 3 players probably could have got a head to, got their head to, because QPR defended the ball in so badly. It's just, it's disappointing how rarely he hits the mark with those sort of efforts, unfortunately. But I thought he had a good game. He was a pretty sort of assured presence at the back there. I think he had possibly one of the more difficult jobs through the majority of the game, because he was kind of marking Samuel on the whole. He seemed to be sort of man marking him, and he actually did the things you want him to do. Like when he was dragged out wide by Samuel, he made sure that he stopped him out there, and he did that two 2 or 3 times that I remember. So yeah, well done, Tom Lees. Hope the injury's not a long-term one. That would be a shame. We're looking a bit thin at the back. I didn't see enough of Shaw to know that he would be a ready replacement for anybody at the back. But the fact that we've got Palmer out and potentially Lees again, that would put us in pretty dire straits back there. Werner?
Burner's going to get an 8 as well, as well as Iorfa. Especially I loved, his getting forward and some of his passes were just excellent, Slight clanger near the end, but it's kind of minor. But anyway, the marauding Julian has had his wealth of meat and cheese for breakfast this morning. So, yeah, everyone's favourite enthusiastic German centre-back, Julian Burner.
Yeah. And I mean, we've got to remember this is a guy that was dead a week ago, and
I know
played 2 times in a week for 90 minutes is really impressive for somebody medically dead.
I know the reanimation of Julian Burner is something fantastic. I mean, the leg was dead, and then the rest of it just followed. So
yeah, as can happen. Interestingly, I don't know that I put all the blame on Burner for that slip, because I think he's expecting Iorfa to deal with it before it bounces, which I think is probably a reasonable thing to have expected. But you can only be in charge of what you do. You can't go around presuming things are going to happen. You've got to just manage your situation. So he should have done better, but I also think it was a bit of a combined effort to cause the moment that needed Wildsmith to come out and deal with it. Moses Adebayo.
A player so lauded by me that I completely forgot that I did player ratings for 10 outfield players and the 4 substitutions, and completely forgot Moses Adebayo. I'm going to give it 7. I thought he was fine. I don't remember anything great from him. I don't remember anything bad, but he was good. I mean, he was there in the performance. Rich. Help me out with some artful, delicious, insightful memories of Moses Adebayo from this game today.
I think it is slightly telling that you did forget that he was there, but I have to say, for Adebayo, that is maybe the best praise that you've been able to give any of his performances for quite some time. I mean, not being noticed when you are as, we called him Clangderella, you've got to stay here and do the chores. You're not allowed anywhere near the ball. Sorry. To not be noticed is actually a marked improvement on giving away penalties and doing stupid things. And that does deserve some praise. He didn't. I thought he put in a good shift. I think he was always there. He was a willing runner quite often, even towards the end, like Berners, when he fell over, making that run at the end. Adebayo was on the flank. He was ready for the ball. So good, a good showing for his. He's got enough of a gas tank to keep going for 90 minutes. Mm-hmm. I think like Wildsmith, I don't think we're over the worries and issues, but today he was not stretched in any way and coped fine with it. He showed that he's a competent enough footballer to play 90 minutes and not let everybody. Yeah. So I think that's a marked improvement on where he's been. Quite possibly his best performance since Christmas, and happy for him to keep filling in on that side, although obviously Murphy is the preferred option.
One pop culture reference that I kind of think about a lot with Moses Adebayo is the song by Travis Reoffender.
I'm not familiar, unfortunately.
You don't remember that? So it's basically kind of the lens of looking at someone who commits crimes, but essentially it's a lover who disappoints you.
Okay.
So the line in the chorus is, "But I'm fooling myself, because you say you love me and then you do it again." And I still think about Clangarella being a reoffender by Travis. But I want, and this is so despite, it's been a real wrestle match with managing expectations and and I don't know. I'd love to think maybe one day. I don't know if anyone connected with the club ever listens to this podcast. I'd be fooling myself if they'd think they would actually go and spend the time to listen to our drivel for a few hours. But I would also like to think, if anyone listens to that and anyone listens to Connected with Mozo the Badger, that like I have been a defender. I have been a defensive lawyer and the prosecuting lawyer in the case of Mod Bod. Really, I've done both. I've done both shifts. Basically, probably about half the time each, I'd say, or maybe more in the prosecution now it feels. So I'm glad he did well today, and I want to see more doing well, but it's just worrying. It's so worrying when he plays, because something bad could well happen, and they usually do.
I think that's fair. I think we're both of the opinion that I don't understand people who sort of, to prove their point, want our own players to play badly.
Oh, no.
I like days like today when Odebajo plays 90 minutes and doesn't drop a clanger, doesn't cause any issues, and puts in a shift like everybody else. That's my dream. I want that more. Like my comments on the lineup. Like, I would love being proved wrong there. Unfortunately, more often than not, when we see a team like that, we're not proved wrong. You know, your initial reaction is right. And with Odebajo, all too often, he's made the mistake. He's dropped the clanger. He's been in the wrong position. You know, it's just the proof is in the pudding more often than not. But I don't bear him any ill will. And in fact, you know, having read the sort of interviews and things like that, he comes across as a very, you know, forthright and interesting and, you know, a likable young man. I would love him to be a great success, and who knows, maybe he'll do a kind of Morgan Fox or a Adam Buxton, not Adam Buxton.
Buckles.
Yeah. Why am I blanking on his first name?
Lewis Buxton.
Lewis Buxton, not Adam Buxton, not Dr. Buxton.
I thought it was funny because a lot of people say that about Lewis Buxton, but I personally don't remember a time when he was terrible. I always remembered him being a certain level of dependable. Maybe sometimes not quite as good as other times, but
I think we liked him when other people didn't like him. I think we were hipsters for Captain Bucky. I think we were on the Bucky bandwagon when it was just getting its wheels fitted.
The Bucky bandwagon sounds like one of those. It sounds like maybe a common name that's used for those. Do you have those pedal pubs in the UK?
Oh yeah.
Bucky bandwagon.
Bucky bandwagon.
What are you doing for your birthday? We've hired a Bucky bandwagon. Got some of my mates around. We're gonna look like twats and be G'd up by someone we don't really like while drinking and paddling. But okay, I've got a point to make. But I want to talk about Gary Monk after we do the player ratings.
Okay.
So,
yeah, no, I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
Maybe we'll rate Monk as well. Let's move along, shall we, to young Alex Hunt.
Oh, young Alex Hunt, the apprentice.
The apprentice.
But I'd love to think it like the ball carrying apprentice for Bannon. He's like the golf caddy for Bannon.
Yeah.
May I advise you, Mr. Bannon, to splay a Hollywood ball out to the wing. May I recommend the 9-iron for this one, sir? Good stuff. He was excellent today. I mean, this is a 7.5 I'm gone for. Yeah. This was an excellent starting debut for him. We can probably get too excited about football players and young players, but I genuinely want to say he should, and I'm pretty sure he will have a great career with Wednesday if he sticks around and keeps developing. Because how old is he?
I want to say 19, but I will.
I mean, he looks younger than anything ever.
He's got a very cherubic sort of face on him, has young Alex Hunt. It's taking forever to load. 20 years old, but only just.
20 years old, only just. Yeah, he's still incredibly young. But I mean, this is... but also say for like a Wednesday young talent, this is one of the ones where... I mean, to talk about... quickly mention a player like Fizayu Deli Bashuro as I scroll back through my notes to remember what his name is and how to hopefully try and pronounce his name, hopefully respectfully and hopefully moderately accurately. Which
PDB. That's all the kids call him. PDB.
FDB.
Oh,
okay.
FDB. Sorry.
FDB. Yeah. But I mean, to be fair, we have a lot of youth players, and we have a lot of youth players who are mentioned, who we mentioned promising things about. But the thing I want to say about Alex Hunt is, let's be brutally honest here, about some of the ones like Liam Shaw, they don't look like they can have like a talent and an impact on the game that maybe a player like Alex Hunt will. Maybe that's been a great positive to say about OU Urahide, Azaze Urahide, that, he came in and had such a positive impact. But interesting that he was such a left field character. Alex Hunt is someone who we've heard a lot about over the past few years, and someone who's looked like he was the promised player to come in and have an impact, to be a first team player. So that, I want to say, is really the difference between someone like FDB, if you're looking at this analogy from a Man City perspective, with someone like Phil Foden, who just looks the absolute business for Man City. So that would be the comparison between Alex Hunt and maybe someone else, like, I don't know, I think a name would be harsh, but maybe someone like Connor Grant, for example, just to say another youngster who we hear a fair bit about, but maybe not quite at that point to kind of make the step up. And the thing I want to say, so without kind of reviewing the rest of the midfield three, but just to summarize that, I want to see this as our starting three in midfield.
Yeah.
More often than not. I mean, with Kieran Lee having a bit of a niggle now, maybe we might see a little bit more of Kieran Lee before the season ends. And then the long-term question of, do we see more of Kieran Lee at Sheffield Wednesday in general, which is still a little bit of a difficult one. I would probably say yes, but I'm realizing that maybe I'm being a little bit generous with that. I don't know. I'm really curious to see. I would love to know what Gary Monk thinks. I'd love to know what any managers think about the players and what their long-term plans are. But especially, I'm interested in what Gary Monk would have to say about Kieran Lee if he would ever be interviewed. Never kind of admit that in a kind of process. So, but I mean, definitely for next season, bar any kind of big signings that kind of outclass this, I like Luongo, Hunt, and Bannon a lot in that midfield three.
Yeah, I think there'll be days where the fact that none of them are a natch. Well, I think Luongo can play that role. I think there'll be days where Luongo has to play holding and have the discipline of that. But maybe that's the nice thing about them as a three, is they are quite, there's elements that are fairly interchangeable. I think that looking at the two players with just Hunt and Lee, maybe you've got to look at next season and say, okay, what, like Kieran Lee, if we signed him, maybe he makes half the games, so potentially there's 23 appearances for him. Would you rather, in a team where we talk about not having enough of a plan going forward, would you rather have Alex Hunt take his place in the squad? And so even if he's not a first team starter every game, he gets those 20. He play a year, he appears in half the games. I think you want to give that to a 20-year-old rather than a kind of, at some point he's almost retired, some point he's going to just break 30-plus-year-old. I think looking at managing your team, managing your squad, that just feels like a more sensible choice out of the two. Ideally, you could just keep... I can see the benefit in keeping Lee around. He's been the bright spark in some games since the restart. But if it's a kind of either or, and this is my football manager FIFA sort of mindset taking, but I would want the young player with all the, to borrow the American phrase, the upside, the potential upside of that. We know what Kieran Lee is. We know what the ceiling is for Kieran Lee.
Yeah.
We don't know what that is for Hunt, but the early signs are pretty promising. And if he can level out at something like the performance he put in today, we've got a very good player on our hands. And he did do a lot of helping out. I mean, it's the movement. It's making yourself available for your other players and willing to take the ball. And that little bit of thoughtfulness that either he's thought ahead of time where he wants to put it, or he's got a mind to what else can I do with this? It doesn't just need to be move it on quickly and don't mess up. Very promising. Really, some of
his quick, incisive passing was really good to see. Like, he kept the ball moving very artfully and purposely at times.
Yes,
it felt a little bit like Luongo in that aspect.
Who again is not a terrible person to have as a kind of mentor type figure. I mean, he's got two very good examples of pretty excellent championship midfielders to play with
alongside him.
They're very different, but they've both had tremendous careers and been on the cusp of being maybe something more as well. I think Luongo has had times where he's been looked at by Premier League teams. Obviously, Bannon's had moments in the Premier League. So yeah, a good company for him to keep, definitely, and good guys for him to emulate in a lot of ways. Bannon was the middle of that three. We should move along a little bit, have some propulsion to matters. So how did you think Baz got on today?
Bannon gets an 8 as well. Very, very good as usual. He doesn't let us down. Maybe there's one or two poor corners, if I'm being a little critical. But again, the negative of having those poor corners is that he makes us tick and keeps everything moving forward with some great passes. That was an absolutely lovely assist for Jacob Murphy. And the funny thing with Bannon is I think sometimes we think that sometimes his performances should be capped off with, an assist or a goal. He's done that today.
Yeah.
But we have had better Bannon, but we've definitely had worse. And it's still, again, a very, very good performance from Barry Bannon.
He's also one of those guys that conversely, sometimes when he shines, the team's not... He's having to do everything himself, whereas today, which was a good full team performance, he's a great participant and additive to that. But yeah, so I do sometimes think like the better O'Bannon performance, maybe the worse the team is doing as a whole, because he's having to kind of... You saw it with Eze today. As the game wore on in the second half, he was almost playing as a defender because he's just desperate to get involved and get the ball moving, get things happening. But actually, it hurts the team because he's not where he needs to be, and that can definitely happen with Bannon. But today was really good. It does suit him being the deeper out of the three. It's just if we're pressed, he's not a good enough defender to be the one that's deepest out of the three.
Yeah, that is a bit of a problem.
It's a dichotomy. But yeah, great game today, great assist. And again, speaking of legs and gas tank, he was, same as Odebajo, was breaking forward for that ball that Burner was going to play, and really annoyed that he didn't get a pass from Burner in the 90th minute after having played pretty much every minute of every game for us since we came back. So well done, Barry Bannon. Whatever you were doing in your back garden was tremendous. Massimo Luongo.
Action Mass. All round, solid, great engine, great passing. He gets an 8. About everything we want.
Yeah.
And also an almost assist for the first goal, which was a lovely shot as well. Lest we forget that.
That was very close. Yeah, he really connected with that on his weaker foot. He was everywhere today. Absolutely everywhere. And I love just how sharp he is in the tackle. Very rarely gives away fouls, actually, but you've been in a tussle with him. Yeah, great player. It's also nice to have a player that seems to like performing against his old league. Yeah,
that's a really good point to bring up.
Because we seem to have had these like wallflower types that go hiding. I'm happy with an 8 for Luongo. I thought he was ace today. Kadeem Harris.
I think this is the man of the match. I think it's an 8.5. I think I'm going to share the opinion of Mark Crossley that it's the man of the match. Just an incredible defensive performance. Just I think if he had some juice going forward, and that's not a criticism, if he had some impact in going forward, I think he would have looked at a 9 and pushing a 10. I'm going to be honest. I said that's no damnation. I can't expect Kadeem Harris to be a world beater, but we can ask. We can ask him to be. Yeah. Just so much energy in the tank. Like, he never looked like tiring today.
No.
Maybe the last minute or two, he had a moment where, you could probably just see a moment where he would just like take a second to just breathe and just give a real exacerbated, exhale.
Yes. Yeah.
But wow. No, that was a really, really good performance. And I'd never think of saying that, like, it would be such a brilliant defensive performance. But just a bit of everything, a little bit of everything everywhere, really. And probably a lot more of an understated performance. The interesting thing is I think we had like Odebajo being... I think both those wingbacks were both understated. Yeah. But we could really just see Kadeem Harris shining today.
I think as well they're a big part of... The whole point of that way that QPR play, Warburton teams play, is they're passing it around the back till you effectively get bored. It's like the tiki-taka sort of thing. At its worst, the tiki-taka idea was we just keep passing it around till you get bored of tracking us, and then we'll pick out the hole that you leave. And a performance like today's, where you give them 70% of the ball, 75% of the ball, and come out with a victory, that's all about shape and hard work and effort. There's so much hustle goes into that. So it is quiet because you're not making loads of runs. You're not moving the ball much yourself. And that is all about them two tracking their men. So when they get it to the striker, he doesn't have an easy ball to play. So he ends up going back to the midfield and they have to just keep cycling around again. And that happened so many times, even when they eventually found the guy they wanted between the lines for us. They didn't have anywhere else to go. And that's all the hard work of those wing backs. So, yeah, great performance. I think I agree. I think Harris probably takes man of the match. But everybody did their bit. It just, a performance like today's just doesn't work if somebody switches off.
Yes.
Mr. Dakrush, ADC.
ADC, I'm interested in what you think about this. I've gone for a 7. I'm going to say maybe he's the worst player on the pitch, but that's probably sounding harsher than it really is. If you know what I mean? He was still decent, you know. This was much better, but, you know, I'm wondering whether I'm seeing from De Cruz. This kind of feels... De Cruz feels to me a little bit like Jacob Murphy at the beginning of the season. Maybe some of the things that I've said about Jacob Murphy in that it just looks a bit powder puff.
I think he's really lacking confidence. I think...
Yeah.
I wonder how he'd be if he got a couple of goals under his belt. Because he's another one... he doesn't really go hiding. Like, he did a real job for the team today, and actually did all right a couple of times. He's not got that confidence in front of goal. He doesn't want to be the guy taking the shot, but he played some good passes at times. Obviously, his corners are good, so there's some technique there. But again, his job, as he was trying to do midweek, it's stretching the opposition. It's keeping them honest at the back. And I think he did that pretty well. I think I'd probably be slightly more tempted to do 7.5, but it's partly because, he had such a heavy involvement in that second goal. But it is frustrating. It is frustrating. It would be nice if he was like 2 or 3% better. I would be similarly to Murphy. I think we'd be having a conversation about, can we get him back next year? Is there a way?
Yes. So, but I mean, that's disappointing because I mean, we think that, like, especially for De Cruz, who's had like such a short spell with the club, everything he should be doing should be an advertisement to take, to get a move here. If you believe this is where he needs to be, maybe there's other stuff going on. Maybe he's a little bit homesick. Maybe there's some other stuff. Maybe there's some language issues. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I just think the real shame with De Cruz is that the fact that it's a similar thing like I'm mentioning with Jacob Murphy earlier. And I was taking a second to kind of be contemplative, and you took over talking, which is fine. I'm not saying that you... Sorry, apologize, Rich. I'm not saying that you said you interrupted. You certainly didn't do that. For the thing I was wanting to say was about the previous... the Murphy of yore was he was lacking a bit of bite and conviction.
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
There was a little bit of belief and a little bit of oomph that I think I was saying earlier on for Murphy. Maybe times when he was maybe a little bit lacking in match sharpness. Maybe he was lacking a bit in confidence. Maybe something was going on that we don't know, to be generous. But he needed that little bit more like attitude of fuck you, I'm going to get the ball, which I think I've also said that with Jordan Rhodes as well. Like... we need players to attack the ball in a predatory fashion, and part of that is a little bit before you hit the ball, right?
Yes, yeah.
This feels, I really feel a little bit like it feels a bit dated from my mentality. It feels a bit dated English person looking at, when I'm talking about this, it feels a little bit like you remember. There's a story about Brian Clough taking the Forest team at half-time and they were losing them behind, and he just had them in silence, and then he puts a ball in front of them and said, go get it. And then they all go out, get G'd up, and like, if my mentality feels like that, so I feel a little bit dated with saying this, but again, I just need to see a bit more steel and aggression from him, which is funny because I mean, I think the hilarious thing about De Cruz coming in was like we looked at him. One of the things was noted about his background was that he has a real knack of being a little bit dirty and picking up a few yellows and red.
Wasn't it something like he had more cards than goals or something like that?
It was that, yes. That was his kind of... And I'm wondering whether, I don't know if there's something contextual about playing in Italy. Maybe there's some people purposely kind of winding him up or getting under his... But it doesn't seem like he's that character here, which is interesting. He seems calmer. I mean, he picked up a red for Wednesday, I think, at one point.
Ooh.
There was one game we talked about him where I'm pretty sure he picked up a red card.
Maybe. Trying to see. No, he's only ever got a yellow for us.
I thought he was sent off at one point. Okay. Interesting. And interesting is not scored for Wednesday as well. I mean, he picked up with an assist, maybe 2 assists. Had a hand today. We forget that it was a beautiful corner as well. Maybe that was something harsh, and maybe I could put him to a 7.5. I'm going to do that. But again, it's I still feel like we're not seeing fully the player who he could be at his best.
Yeah, do you know what? It reminds me a little bit of, we had Gabby Agbonlahor on loan. And he hit the post against Norwich in his first game. And I just always remember thinking, if that had gone in, I wonder, because his next season, Agbonlahor went on to become a Premier League striker. Like, I think he scored against Man United and things. And he then spent 10 years kind of leading the line for Villa very effectively. And you do have those moments, if you get that goal on your debut, maybe you have a purple patch and you do amazing things. I think De Cruz really looks like a guy that needs a goal. I also just wonder what his best position is. The last couple of games he's been up front. I'm not sure he's a centre forward, but the fact that he can cross a ball is helpful. I don't know. He's 23, and it's probably a kind of, this is your go hard or go home sort of moment in life.
Maybe so, or maybe it's just another litany of a player who he may sound damning, may sound crappy, but he may just be a journeyman player, and he may just kind of hop around places. He'll have a career, he'll have moments. I'm just disappointed he's not had one or two few more moments with us for Wednesday.
Yeah, but not everybody's that quick. And not many people who are as tall as him are that quick. So there's kind of part of you would, in America, they'd find a sport for him. Do you know what I mean? There's certain athletes, like in America, it's like, oh, you're this sort of an athlete, we'll do something with, we'll find a place for you. And I just wonder if De Cruz just hasn't had that manager or coach who's sort of spotted the potential there and given him, molded him into something. He's a bit shapeless, a bit aimless, kind of drifting through things. I share the kind of. I've not been unhappy with what he's done, but I've been slightly disappointed.
We did have one episode where you basically accused that he was never a footballer.
Well, I still haven't seen huge amounts of things from him, but the fact he's good at corners is weird to me.
Yeah, it is weird. He's a lot better than Bannon is at corners.
Well, he hits his corners with real weight and pace. So that's technique. That's I think if we were in a position where we could take gambles, I would like to see him have another year, because I suspect there's a bit of a player in there, but I still feel like I'm basing that on very, very little evidence. It's like 95% not player, 5% player, and whether there's more to unearth. Anyway, let's move on to Trumpy Bum.
Trumpy Bum himself gets an 8.
In spite of himself, gets an 8.
In spite of him, I know. I say if he could have finished more, it would have been a 9 or a 10. Yeah. Really. Like, it's funny. So I just checking the Wednesday Twitter, and they've retweeted Josh Windass, who said should be walking away with a match ball.
Absolutely, he should have.
And he really should have. And it's just heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking for that to have that negative in talking about him today, because I mean, outside of that, what I've written here is he was just so full of himself in the best possible way.
Yeah.
Like the confidence and arrogance to just be like, I'm going to have an absolute go at this QPR team today, QPR defense. Just rinse them on so many occasions with his pace. We think about that chance where he was one-on-one with the keeper. Yeah. And maybe that was one of the few good moments from Joe Lumley today.
I think it was good goalkeeping, definitely.
It was, because I think Windass did the right stuff, and I think 9 times out of 10 he gets it round the keeper, and then he's just got the challenge of getting it, getting a goal bound, which is usually pretty good. But really good to see him back. And so did he play midweek?
That is a good old question you're asking that.
Because I think this was one of the surprises of the.
I was really surprised to see him start.
Me too.
He came on for the Cruz at the 70th minute.
Right. Yes, and I think he maybe had a moment midweek as well.
He did. Yeah, I can't remember it distinctly, but he.
A lot of it is being a real. It's been very strange, but anyway. It was really good, and it was more to come. We've seen that he is a player who seems to be. I'm really curious what happened at Wigan for him. I mean, just him in general with his career as well. But I'm not sure why it's been a bit good riddance from Wigan, and they've largely done so well. There must be something. I'm wondering if there's maybe something, allegedly on the dressing room, the training ground, the training room. All four of those things. Because I don't quite understand, and I think he seems like he's rejuvenated here. Maybe this is purely just. Maybe it's negative. It's maybe just his loan spell. But he's looking really good, and he's looking a player of what we need. And he's got a bit of bite. He's got a bit of everything. He's had a few games where he's looked really, really good. And I'm really hoping we see more to come from the rest of the season. It seems to be rumored that he's a player that we want. We might be able to get him from Wigan. I think naturally we might be able to get from Wigan. There's also the confusing thing of what happens with Wigan now, because they're in a very interesting situation. I'm really looking forward to seeing more. I'm glad he got himself on the score sheet, even if it was. I was worried for a second that he would have been offside. I'm pretty sure he was offside.
There was a question. Yeah, he may well have been offside.
Or it might just be great work from him to be so quick to get into that position after the flick on from who we think is Iorfa. And maybe he was going wide from Iorfa anyway. Maybe he was going to hit the post. But
maybe, yeah.
Anyway, he had the conviction to make it a point to score then, and I'm really happy for him.
I don't know whether, looking at, it would be interesting to know a little bit what sort of went on with him, but I don't know whether he just never quite did, in terms of goals, he never quite did for Wigan what he'd done at Rangers previously. So I wonder if he just didn't quite gel. But as you say, he looks like a guy that wants to stay, I think. He's playing like...
Yeah.
Unlike De Cruz, he's showing a kind of, this is my opportunity and I am grabbing it. I also get the feeling, and this may age badly, but I get the feeling he might be the sort of player that, a bit like Barry Bannon, kind of gets that Wednesday's a big club and buys into that and kind of drives him a bit.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I can see him sort of taking a real pride in pulling on the shirt. And
I guess there's an interesting thing is that we signed him, and it was a little bit like, when we signed him, we were a little bit like,
yeah.
At the time. So maybe he's also seeing this as a great opportunity. If he's not at Wigan, if he's not at Wednesday, then he's making a very much case of him being a championship footballer.
Yes.
So it seemed like we had seen some stuff to make him, and I'm really glad we did sign him and he did come in. He has largely, for when he has played and when he's not been injured, he's had a very positive impact at the club. So maybe there's also a little bit about the time, the place, the situation, a lease of life again. There must have been some disappointments from at Wigan.
Yeah. Okay. Let's whiz through
Let's give Wigan £375,000. We'll do a real Milan Mandaric bid. Get him in.
Yeah.
It'll be the next Chris O'Grady.
But there's a lot to like about him. I think he looks like a classy player. He seems to have a knack at, today aside, his Wednesday career prior to this, a bit of a knack of just grabbing a goal, which they're hard to come by for us. So a guy that gets 1 in 4 with kind of perfunctory regularity to it, it's not something to be sniffed at for us. I just get that feeling, I was thinking, I was getting kind of early Forestieri type vibes from him today, because he sort of looked a bit unplayable. He should have done better with his chances. but he kept making them chances.
Mm.
And I loved what he did at the byline when he cut that ball across the box. It was a shame that nobody was there, and even more of a shame that if somebody was going to be there, it would have been Hunt. I mean, if that had happened, that would have been incredible for him on his debut. But
do you also remember he was one of the more positive players in the 5-0 capitulation away at Brentford as well?
Yeah. So fingers crossed we can tie that deal up and make it happen. I just feel like it would be a good fit. I don't know what it is. I've just got that kind of. I think he gets it. Maybe because of his dad. I just think he gets Wednesday in a way. Anyway.
Right. Because I mean, I guess that's the interesting thing. Because for Dean Windass, long scope and stint at Hull, kind of outstanding cult hero status at Hull. I think he feels. Do you get that feeling a little bit of like how Ryan Lowe kind of felt for Wednesday?
Yes.
Like, this is a big occasion, and I am going to have. I've had a few clubs. I may have a few more, but this is a bit of a spotlight moment.
Yeah, I think Bullen. I think that was why Bullen was so endearing to people. Is he kind of got what it was to be at Wednesday. He's had that journeyman's career, and Windass has had ups and downs. He's been down in League Two. He's played with Rangers and got quite a lot of goals actually up there with Rangers. Then made a bigger money move to Wigan. Maybe it's not quite worked out, but I think those players that have kind of had some ups and downs, it's a different football in life to a guy that's a kid that's just dropped from the players who don't seem to work at Wednesday are people like Bostock and that ilk, where it's like these 10-year-olds plucked from obscurity and having money thrown at them when they were tiny.
Yes. Yeah, and there's a feeling, there's probably a personal feeling for them of character that they failed on a bigger stage, so that this doesn't feel like a big occasion. This feels like a step down for them. Yeah. So, I guess it's interesting. We'll come on to this. Let's do.
Should we just do Murphy? I don't think the other.
No,
Okay.
Well, I think Shaw. I think for all of them, I'm just going to say no one gets less than a 7.
Yeah,
so I think,
that's
basically Shaw, Nuyu, and Joey P. I'd like to actually go back and maybe watch a bit more of the game and see if I can see a bit more from Shaw, because I'd like to know.
I don't really remember him doing anything very much, but
no, but that might also be a positive as well.
Yes.
And also a similar thing for Joey Pelopessi, maybe one of his better games that he didn't do anything.
I thought that was a good swap actually, because I think Hunt was starting to look a bit tired.
Sure.
And I think Pelopessi did what you want him to do. He came on and shored things up a little bit defensively. G'd people up. You could just, I don't know. I think it was a good energy to introduce it into the game at that time, because he is enthusiastic. He's sort of got that puppy dog style to him, and I think getting on and G'ing everybody up a bit when everyone was starting to have that lull was quite timely.
Joey Pelopuppy.
Joey Pelopuppy.
Joey Pelopuppy power. He's like Scrappy Doo.
He is. There are elements of Scrappy Doo about little Joey P. Got to be said.
Good stuff. Nuyu as well. That was a good finish from the Harris out of the play. Let's give him a little bit. I get the interesting thing I wanted to say was maybe this is more just talking randomly about Nuyu. Do you find it interesting that looking at QPR? Let's just kind of a quick QPR look. Jordan Hugill wasn't there. Jordan Hugill actually picked up a hamstring injury after he scored against Middlesbrough the other week. But isn't it interesting how we talk about, you talked about it with Stockley midweek.
Yeah.
We really, really suffer when one of our championship rivals brings on the large battering ram powerhouse forward. And a lot of the times they absolutely fucking have their way with our defense. Isn't it interesting that, unfortunately, I don't feel we've seen enough of that from Nuyu anymore? Because I remember that being a thing for Nuyu. I remember Nuyu being a thorn in Derby's side, being a thorn in Middlesbrough. He has a fun time against Middlesbrough, Adi Nuyu in general.
Yeah. What I would say is I wonder how much of that is consistency of delivery from the back, because Nuyu cannot move to the ball, and I think Fletcher allowed everybody to get pretty lazy with with what they served further forward, because Fletcher would move the whole width of the field and still compete for the ball, whereas Ati just simply does not have that. You need to put it within 6 feet of him, and then he will wrestle his man and cause problems.
Which I think is actually one of the interesting things. I think that previously I asked I think it's maybe last season I asked the Intermittent Wednesday podcast, Al's About Stats. I think I asked them a question about how effective Nuyu was, and they said, well, actually, he was actually quite effective from headers, which seemed incredible because it doesn't seem to match up with what you actually observe. Yeah, what actually I think we see as fans that I typically don't think that good in the air as the stats can suggest. Anyway, I just thought it was interesting to bring up.
Yeah.
How other teams seem to do that to us. John Hugel also was the real catalyst for a QPR winner Wednesday earlier on the season.
Yeah.
And that was the reverse, and this was definitely the reverse of that one.
And we were really outplayed in that one, weren't we?
Well, I think we should have definitely got something, but we absolutely got our pockets picked from QPR, thanks to Hugel absolutely mullering Tom Lees at the back.
Enjoyably, they had a player called Gubbins on the bench.
Oh, fantastic. I've done a lot of teasing of the names QPR. I think the last episode QPR I talked about Elias Chair.
Oh, yes.
Because he's...
They've also got somebody called Betek.
Brilliant. There's so much comedy material just taking a piss out of people's names.
But their stadium name is good and shouldn't be questioned.
Yes, as we found. Thank you to listener Boz who made that correction for me. Anyway,
I've got a file saved called the Luke getting cancelled version of that episode.
Still not yet cancelled.
No,
it's close. It's coming.
It's close. Right. Well, okay. So we sort of haphazardly now given a rating to everybody apart from the one that really needed one, which was Jakob Murphy.
Jakob Murphy gets an 8.
Yeah.
Everything we needed from the bench. So good in that position. Such a great... I think this is Gary Monk's substitution of the season, I want to say.
It was
bringing Murphy on for ADC at that mark. It was basically it was the Spinal Tap turning it up to 11.
I was so pleased that he just went up top. I was worried we were going to shuffle things round, and I was so pleased and relieved that it was just like for like. And then that was before I even saw quite how good Murphy was at playing that position. That second striker just suited.
Do you remember that incredibly incisive through ball for the Murphy one-on-one? That was
for the Windas's one-on-one. Yeah, that was
Windass one. That was from Murphy.
That was great. It was.
What the heck was that ball? It was incredible.
It was.
It was so sumptuous. And that's before he just winds up, he just kind of rolls his body out and just effortlessly kills it into the corner. It was like a delicious kind of bunker chip shot for a chip shot for a hole in one.
Oh,
it was something else.
Bunker chip shot.
Lovely. Nice sandy
scallops.
Sandy scallops, yeah. Oh, yeah, no, he was fantastic. Brilliant performance at that position. What a finish.
And those two subs, I think, were vital. I think I think Shaw for Lees was obviously kind of hand forced in terms of the injury that Lees picked up. But the timing of those two subs, it kind of broke up their rhythm a little bit, which was good in terms of that. But it also gave us the energy, the legs to kind of see out the game and grab that third goal, which made everything much more comfortable and enjoyable from that point forward. So what you wanted to talk about Gary Monk, so we should do that before we wrap things up.
Yeah. So I guess the interesting thing is there's been it was a very abject performance midweek. We talk a lot about whether Gary Monk is quite the person to take us forward. I think there's still some questions. There's a difficulty in a 4 in a lot of Wednesdayite sides, because again, I feel like the question is, we're certainly a hell of a lot better than this position and this form and some of the performances this season. Even with some players out of the picture, we still have a lot of players who really should be performing a hell of a lot better than they are. The thing I really want to say about Gary Monk is, I know this is a little bit of patter in the press, but I think it has to be said a lot about his character and his attitude.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it's interesting. You've talked about previously. I love, Rich, how you brought up about, even when we've criticized Bannon, you said, I've never seen him go hiding. And if we are to believe what we're being told, and I think it's very truthful, some of the stuff that Gary Monk is coming out with, I think he's a man with a very positive attitude, and a man with a lot of belief in himself. So I don't think he's done from an attitude perspective.
No.
If there is something that comes around, I think there's still the question of, is he the right man to take us forward in the rebuild? I think that question is still very much there. But I don't besmirch him carrying on and being the man to have a go at that. I think it'd be very interesting to see, going off a couple of the signings we've made, the loan signings, thinking about Trumpy Bomb.
Yes.
I think we're making positive gambles.
That's a good point. I think I like what you're saying about his character, and I think you're spot on. He does front up more often than not, and seems to be a guy that's willing to kind of break a few home truths and things like that. But I was also reminded by the first half of this game. Actually, more often than not, that has been the experience with Monk this season. Is he's kind of nailed the game plan, and if we grab the first goal, we're a bit of a nightmare to play at times. But it's all about that first half performance. It's all about he seems to be less good at reacting in the moment. That's what seems to kind of catch him out. But the planning, I've looked at what you do, and particularly against teams that play like QPR. If you're a team that has the audacity to, you've got a keeper that can pass it, do you? We'll see about that. So many of our good performances have been against those teams that have airs and graces. That we're a bit like a championship version of Man City or Liverpool, actually. And we tend to do really well against them, and because I don't know, we're good at setting traps. We're good at obeying those kind of trigger points. Warburton is a very experienced and has been a very successful manager. And today, Gary Monk thought him into a box. He just didn't know what hit him today. And we've seen some of those performances. I mean, you talked about Middlesbrough. It's where I think the tricky thing is, a bit like Lee Johnson, these runs of poor results have kind of dragged things down. But, I mean, he's been beset by all sorts of awful stuff this season. So, it's easy after a win like today to think, I'd be interested to see what a season slightly less battered by waves of stuff completely out of his control, what that looks like. Intriguing. I mean, I just felt on Wednesday, my feeling so counter to that was, this is not as bad of a team as we are we're getting worse results than the squad deserves.
Completely.
So it's so hard to have both those things, because today's team was worse than the team that started against Preston. Yeah. It's so, like I say, it's so weird. We have been very, very hard to second guess this term, for better or worse. But
Which
I don't
maybe
think it's not the dressing room. I don't think he's. I think team spirit seems to be good. It's baffling. Sorry, go on.
It is baffling. I mean, maybe this is just maybe this is just testament to being a remarkably inconsistent championship side. But it doesn't feel right. It doesn't quite sit well with me. I think we would have had less. I feel like we should have had less inconsistency.
Yeah.
From what's happened. And I also feel that, again, it's that mentality that, I completely agree with you with the whole thing that, it's not surprising that we concede a goal. The thing that really surprises me is that when we do that, the floodgates open and we just capitulate.
Yeah.
We just, I think it's said maybe by Jesus that, if you do something, put all of your heart into it. And certainly if we capitulate a game, we commit to that. We really do.
He was a good manager. He had 11 of them on board. Top of the job. That 12th guy, Judas. Couldn't rely on him at all.
Oh. You need a better backup goalkeeper at number 12, don't you?
You do.
You do, yeah.
Had a touch of the Grobbelaars about him. I do think. I suppose there's always ups and downs in seasons. There's always injuries and things like that. I do wonder how many times, like we sort of had happen with this new formation. It feels like we've had 3 or 4 versions of Monk has kind of pulled a new team, a new formation out of his backside almost. Just somehow come up with this. We've coined the term Monkenstein's monster. He kind of cobbles all these bits together and makes something that really produces above and beyond. It's more than the sum of its parts. and then there's an injury or somebody's suspended, or that there's always just been something that's broken it down, and like this 3-5-2 has kind of survived a few bumps in the road now,
which is nice, because I feel like previously we've had stuff where I feel there's been a mentality. I'm not sure if this was quite so much under Bullen, but it felt a bit like, we're doing this, it works. Okay, we're doing it again.
Yeah.
It didn't work today. Okay, we'll just scrap that and do something else. Yeah, it's good that we're sticking with something, because I think that it helps the partnerships at the back to have 3 people there. I think the problem is we can't do a partnership of 2.
No, we don't have the players to do it, do we?
No. So again, we're doing the same thing in midfield we're doing in defence. It's like we can't have Bannon and Kieran Lee. They're not as good a pairing as they seem to be. We can't have Bannon and Luongo. We can't have Bannon and Pelopessi. We can't have Bannon and we can't have Lee. We can't have Lee and Pelopessi. There's so many awful singular combination. But we bring a third player into the mix, and it just seems oddly genius for us.
Yes.
Because I think we talked a lot about, but I guess it kind of makes sense, because again, you're looking at that on the wings, and he's also said the 4-4-2, it never really worked for the partnership up front for the 2 strikers. It doesn't work for the left back right back, right wing, left back, left wing.
Mm-hmm.
We don't seem to be doing a King and Worthington thing.
No.
They don't seem to work. So effectively, you basically said, well, just give them an overtime for Murphy and Harris. And the hilarious thing today was Harris has got so much in the tank.
Yeah.
He's who is it? Was it Esso? He's got a tiger in the tank.
He's got a tiger in the tank.
He's got a tiger in the tank. It's just so much energy and industry there that Harris can just do the work of 2 people. In fact, having a second person makes it worse for him, so it's better for him. And Murphy's been quite good in both aspects. There's some games Murphy's been quite good defensively, considering, and getting forward, just the absolute, sometimes not so good, sometimes very, very good.
Yeah.
Interesting that we've looked at these. We've done away with the pairings of 2, and it's worked so much better for us.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it does mean that those guys on the wings have to do a lot, but we're blessed with a couple of players, or 3. Well, it seems like a few players that have got the legs to do that. I do think it works. What works well for Murphy and Harris is they carry such a threat going forward. So if you're trying to, you don't want to overcommit, because they're both more than good enough to punish you if you give them space in behind. So yeah, it's another very good iteration of a team from this strange squad that he has to draw on. I think he's probably done enough to be given the job. How I feel about that changes on a regular basis, but I think he's going to get the chance to do this rebuild.
Which I think previously we said that's some of the benefit of Wednesday being in such a kind of disarray, is that it gives him the opportunity that he might not have had the opportunity to have if we were better run,
Yeah.
I hope it's all positive as well, as much as a positive it is for Gary Monk.
The points total since Christmas is shockingly bad.
Yes.
But before Christmas, he was also responsible for us getting up to 3rd in the table. So, if you punish it, if you kind of penalise him for the bad form since Christmas, you've also got to praise him for the good form before Christmas. And there have been some big factors that are nothing to do with him. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Let's see. I mean, onwards and upwards. Let's end on a positive note. Mm-hmm. Really, a really great performance today. And if you've managed to make it to the end of this podcast, you have the stamina and staying power of a Kadeem Harris. So well done to you.
Well
a pat on the back all round. I'm going to say cheerio, Luke, before we get on to something fresh.
Sounds good.
Have a good week, folks, and look after yourselves. Cheerio.
Have a good week, everybody. Bye-bye.